In the previous video, we talked about how the president is the head of executive and how he can also, even then, he can be the part of the parliament. The answer lies to, the fact that we have actually, the base is still of the British parliamentarian system, right? The base is still continued with British Constitution. And in the British Constitution, if you'll see, in earlier times, first legislative came, the king had its role, how it used to play with the legislative. Now, after years, after centuries, developed the executive, that is the Council of Ministers, and the king had its a separate kind of dealing with the executive. The king had the dual role. Similar system was adopted in India. India has a parliamentary democracy, and the king here is the elected one, right? Not general lineage king. The king in India is known as the president, and as the king in England has a dual role to play, the king in India it also has the dual role to play. There is no rigid separation between the legislative and the executive in India, right? So when the king he addresses in the council under when he listens to Council of Ministers under Article 74, he is the king in the Council of Ministers, that is executive, and when the king addresses to the parliament, he is the king in the parliament, right? Basically, if we see Article 74, it says that Council of Ministers are going to advise the president, right? हम हैं 74 advising minister. Okay. Again, as we discussed earlier, Article 86 and Article 87, we will discuss now in detail. Article 86 says the right of president, it's a right to address and send messages to parliament. Article 87 is a duty. 86 is a right, 87 is a duty. He has to do. What happens every year before the commencement of the first session of general election is an addressal by the president, right? And this addressal is also before the budget session, that is the first session of each year, that is the budget session. And in budget session, both the houses are they are together, right, in the central hall sitting together, right? So Article 87 is used by the president. Never in the history of India, in complete 75 years, never Article 86 has been used, right? Nobody has denied the president up till now that you should not address the parliament, and hence it was never that president had to use Article 86. No, right? Once upon a time, left, it said that since this addressal of president, it's like the relic of colonialism. It's like the king, even it happens the same in Britain, but there it's the king or the queen, right? But left's point of view was not listened, because the address is of multiple significance. The Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the lower house, to the parliament. Since the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to Lok Sabha, executive at the same time, executive is accountable to the parliament. That is, executive is accountable to the legislative. Executive is accountable to the legislative. And Council of Ministers prepares a script and it delivered by the president. The same script is delivered by the president, stating what his government is going to do, and he addresses to both the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And hence this addressal of president acknowledges the executive's accountability to the legislature. A. B. Why this addressal is of significance? It offers a solemn and ceremonial commencement to the proceedings of Parliament. Even though the president may have the BMW Ferrari, but still he'll come in the cart. So it's the most regal form of the address, because nobody has to get up, nobody needs to get out, nobody will speak when the president speaks, right? And thirdly, the budget session doesn't start with the president's addressal. It can be challenged constitutionally, as it was challenged by the Calcutta High Court when the Legislative Assembly of West Bengal didn't start with the addressal. The budget session didn't start with the addressal of the governor in Sayyid Habibullah 1980. Right. So these are the three significance of why the presidential address in the budget session, as well as before the commencement of the first day of the parliament after the general election, why is it important? And if we see the difference between US and India, US is a presidential form of democracy, India is a parliamentary form of democracy. The president is separately elected in India, no general election for president. The legislatures are also separately elected. In India, there is only general election for legislatures, right? So hence there is a rigid separation of powers. In India, the separation of powers is not so rigid as in US, and hence we adopted this separation of powers, right? That is the separation of power between executive, legislative from United States, and adapted in our parliamentary democracy. Article 79 says the parliament comprises of president, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Right? If you move to what are the functions of parliament, right? The legislative function, the first is the legislative function, and it is the most important function among all the functions, right? Now, if we compare the legislation of state legislation versus the union legislative assembly, state legislative assembly versus union legislative assembly, that is the parliament, which comprises of Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, and the president. It has the territorial extent of legislation in Indian territory, plus has extraterritorial legislative power, right? State legislative only in state or in any part of state. That is what is Article 245 mentions. Now, if you see what is Article 245, it says that extent of laws made by the parliament and by the legislatures of the states, right? So extent here means the geographical area or geographical boundary, right? 245 clause 1 says, subject to the provisions of these constitutions, right? The laws will be made only according to provisions. Parliament may make laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India, and the legislatures of the state may make laws for the whole or any part of the state, right? For whole territory of India or any part, for state legislatures, it is for any part of the state or whole of the state. So clause 2 says, no law made by the parliament shall be deemed to be invalid on the ground that it would have extraterritorial operations, right? So you cannot, make any law null and void or falsify that law on the ground that it has extraterritorial operations, right? Now, if we see more about what is extraterritorial legislative power, which is quite interesting to see, Parliament, that is the President, Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, they have this ETO. They can perform extraterritorial operations. And Section 3 of IPC says any person liable by an Indian law to be tried for an offence committed beyond India shall be dealt with according to the provisions of this code for any act committed by India in some manner as if such act had been committed within India. Okay, so if you are committing anything outside of India, it will be dealt in the same manner as if it was committed in the Indian territory, right? So this is A, and it says any person, right? Any person means any person, Indian, non-Indian. IPC section 4 says that it regulates offences committed on ships or aircrafts which are registered in India, and it also regulates offences committed through the computer resources, right? So applicable to any citizen of India, A. B, it says within or outside India, and C, it says it's also applicable to the person which is committing any act against India, that is, ships, aircrafts, right? Or sitting, that person, that foreigner is attacking the computer resources, right? In 2012, the Italian vessel was sailing through the sea near the Indian coast, and two Italian marines, the name of the ship was Enrica Lexi, they shot down two Indian fishermen indiscriminately without seeing whether they are pirates or just normal fishermen. Italy was very furious when these Italian marines were captured and jailed, and a FIR was lodged. Italy said that it has happened in international water, and international water is governed by UNCLOS, that is United Nations Clause Code on Laws Regulation of Seas, which says, the UNCLOS says that offence committed by ship, the offender will be tried in the very same country whose flag is on the ship, right? So since Italian flag was on the ship, hence according to UNCLOS, they should have been tried against in Italy. India knew that they would not be tried, right? India said that according to IPC section 4, right, they have committed crimes against India. Also, IPC section 3 also says the same, right? And hence the claims were resisted to take back. Now, till 2012, it was thought that the extraterritorial operations, the legislative power of the parliament is absolute. But again, it was changed in GVK Industries versus Income Tax Office, where the parliament power to legislate beyond Indian territories, it's not absolute, was what stated, and parliament can legislate only to protect the rights of Indian citizens. And India is a country in community of countries, else there will be international warfare if every country starts to make laws, right? And new doctrine was given rather than ETO, the extraterritorial doctrine of extraterritorial operations. The doctrine of territorial nexus was used to redefine the ETO, where it said that there must be link with the Indian soil. Then only you make laws